in October, a Falcon 9 rocket carrying 54 internet satellites is set to take off from SpaceX Cape Canaveral Air Force Station LC-40 launch pad no earlier than 10:50 a.m. EDT. The Starlink V1.5 satellites are one of the last few things SpaceX needs to finish the second of 5 shells that make up the first constellation. But will the launch be successful? How helpful would it be? And what exactly should we know about it? Welcome to Smarter Tech, for all the interesting technology news across the world. And without further ado, let's get started. The goal of the Starlink satellite constellation system is to cover the whole world with internet access. This system works best in rural or geographically isolated areas where internet access is spotty or doesn't exist at all. Starlink is an effort by SpaceX to build a global broadband network. It uses a constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit to provide high-speed internet services. Instead of sending internet data through cables like fiber optics, a satellite system sends radio signals through the vacuum of space. Ground stations send signals to satellites in orbit, which then send the information back to users on Earth. Each satellite in the Starlink system is flat and weighs 573 pounds. Up to 60 satellites can fit on one SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Starlink aims to build a low-latency network in space that makes edge computing on Earth easier. Creating a global network in space is not easy, especially since low latency is a key requirement. To meet this need, SpaceX has proposed a group of almost 42,000 tablet-sized satellites that would circle the Earth in low orbit. CubeSats are small satellites that are often used in LEO. They create tight network coverage and have low latency because they orbit close to Earth. Before we continue, hold up, if you're watching us for the first time, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can enjoy our future videos while getting updated. Getting back to the topic, by looking at a similar launch, we can predict and understand what will happen during the upcoming launch. On Sunday, October 20th, 53 more Starlink internet satellites were sent into orbit by a Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral. This was SpaceX's 31st launch of the year, tying the company's total number of launches for all of 2021 and keeping the rate of one launch per week. At 10:20 a.m. EDT, the Falcon 9 rocket took off from Pad 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. 9 Merlin 1D engines with 1.7 million pounds of thrust and rocket-grade kerosene fuel fired up to launch the Falcon 9 launch vehicle. The Falcon 9 flew over the Atlantic Ocean and up through scattered clouds as it headed northeast. It got off the ground just before rain showers and thunderstorms moved over the spaceport. In less than a minute, the launcher achieved the speed of sound, and 2.5 minutes later, it shut down its first stage engines. Before falling back into the atmosphere, the first stage rose 84 miles in the air in an arc after separating from the upper stage. 3 engines were employed to slow down re-entry, while 4 titanium grid fins were used to regulate it. The Falcon booster landed on the football field-sized drone ship for the 131st time, and the first stage, which has the tail number B1051, flew for the 13th time. This booster is one of SpaceX's oldest rockets that can be used repeatedly. And as we can remember, in March 2019, the first test flight of SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft without a person on board took place on B1051. Since then, Canada's RadarSat Constellation mission, SiriusXM's SXM-7 radio broadcasting satellite, and 9 Starlink missions have all been sent into space by the booster. To date, SpaceX has approved at least 15 missions for the current generation of Falcon 9 boosters. This is more than the original 10 missions. The Starlink 422 launch on Sunday followed the same path as most of SpaceX's recent Starlink missions, with the Falcon 9's guidance computer aiming for an elliptical orbit between 144 and 210 miles high. The upper stage of the Falcon 9 burned its single Merlin engine until almost T+9 minutes. The 2 halves of the Falcon 9's nose shroud were thrown away during the upper stage firing. And when the fairing shells land in the ocean, a SpaceX recovery ship in the Atlantic will pull them out. And now the Falcon rocket launched on Sunday was the 50th time that a used fairing shell was used. After the engines were turned off, the second stage coasted across the North Atlantic Ocean. At T plus minutes and 28 seconds, it let go of the 53 Starlink satellites. However, before the Starlink satellites were sent into space, the upper stage spun independently. The flat-packed spacecraft, each of which weighs more than a quarter ton, flew away from the Falcon 9 after the rocket released the rods that keep the satellites firmly attached to the spacecraft during ascent. Once the satellites are free of the rocket, they will spread out, unfold their solar panels, and turn on their krypton-fueled ion engines to climb 335 miles into the sky. At launch, each Starlink satellite weighed more than a quarter ton. They give SpaceX customers all over the world access to broadband internet services. And with the launch of the 53 satellites on Sunday, SpaceX has sent 2,858 Starlink spacecraft into orbit. This number includes prototypes and satellites that have already been turned off. Jonathan McDowell, an astrophysicist and expert on tracking spaceflight activities, says the more than 2,500 Starlink satellites are working for SpaceX in space now. They are either in use or moving into their final operating orbits. That's about 6 times as many satellites as OneWeb's constellation of 428 internet satellites, the second largest fleet of spacecraft in orbit. Even before the upcoming launch of the Starlink 436, more than 2/3 of the 4,408 satellites needed to finish the constellation are already in orbit and seem to be working as planned. About 2,700 of the 3,131 working satellites are at their operational heights and could, in theory, serve customers on Earth. About 390 more satellites are currently making their way up to their operational orbits. More than 2/3 of SpaceX's first Starlink constellation will be done when they're done. As previously mentioned, not all of them was completely successful. On February 3rd, 49 Starlink satellites were set into space by a rocket launch. However, 38 of them did not reach their intended orbit because of a geomagnetic storm, and they burned up as they re-entered Earth's atmosphere. But to SpaceX, that's not a big problem. In a statement on February 22nd about Starlink's security and long-term viability, the business stated that they could produce up to 45 satellites per week, and they have launched up to 240 satellites in a single month. The constellation comprises 5 orbital shells, groups of satellites with the same orbital inclination and altitude. They're almost the same and focus on the mid-latitudes of Earth, where most people live. Jonathan McDowell, an astrophysicist, says the 1,456 of the 1,584 possible Group 1 satellites are working. This means that both are almost done. With about 1,405 working satellites in space, Group 4 is one launch behind. With 31 missions already done this year, SpaceX is on track to almost double the number of times it launches by 2023. Last year, SpaceX sent 31 Falcon 9 rockets into space. In 2020, they sent 26 Falcon 9 rockets into space. But the question is, are they done yet? First, you need to understand that the increased flight rate is made possible by making it easier to fix rockets, the high demand for Starlink missions, and SpaceX using its launch site at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California more often. So far this year, there have been 6 Falcon 9 launches from this site. Last year, there were only 3 Falcon 9 launches from California. In 2020, there was only 1. In addition to the launch of Starlink 436, SpaceX plans to launch Starlink 431 in late October. The company's manifest for November is full of up to 5 commercial launches, which could stop any more Starlink launches from happening next month. If just a few plans stay the same, December could be an even better month for the business. But there is a chance that SpaceX will find room for 2 more Starlink launches in the next 10 weeks. This would mean that Group 4 would almost be finished by the end of the year. Anyway, what are your thoughts about the SpaceX 31st Starlink launch? Will this new technology be a great help to all of us? Comment down below. Also, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more amazing videos. Goodbye!